Lord, may we serve you all our days, ever rejoice to sing your praise, as we together your wisdom seek. Charge us with truth whene'er we speak. Lord, may we ever know your will. Come to us when our hearts are still, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve, as we your guidance with joy receive. May we as one your bliss achieve.
It's very, very nice for us to hear the choir and to, hello, and to hear it sounding so good. You know, it takes quite a bit of work and concentration, but more than that, it takes blending together and creating a kind of harmony, not just of the voice, but of the consciousness, in order for a choir to sing well together. In many cases, Ananda choirs have sung in places where very professional choirs sing, but the Ananda choirs sound better because the consciousness of the people blends, and also because they're in tune with the music that they're singing. You know, great music can be wonderful in terms of the melody or whatever you're hearing, but very often the meaning behind these words is not very uplifting, and popular music is actually detrimental because the words and the music and the beat of the music often is meant to draw the consciousness down. If you listen to popular songs, very often the beat is such that it will purposely speed up your heartbeat in order to make you excited. But making you excited is also a way of making you nervous and making you feel like you're not very centered. And so Swami Kriyananda was quite strong in telling us not to listen to popular music, rock and roll, and those kinds of musics. At least in India, even the popular music is often much nicer. But in the West, music is often very downward pulling to the spirit. So tonight we're going to talk about lifestyle that helps us accelerate our spiritual growth. This is the third of a 3-class series. The first class in this was the techniques that help. The second class was the attitudes that help. And tonight we're going to talk about the lifestyle that helps. So I started out talking about music because the environment that we create around us, the kind of lifestyle that we lead, will have a very, very powerful effect on either raising our consciousness or drawing our consciousness down. And so there are several things that we can do. One is, since we're talking about music, and that has to do with the hearing aspect, we should look at the environment that is coming into our brain, into our consciousness, from each of our senses. And we should recognize the fact that we can't just be unconscious about the environment that we're in. If we produce a conscious environment, it will help raise our consciousness, and it will help move us more quickly toward God. And so, speaking of what we hear, music is very important in creating an environment. And so, many of you, when you commute to work, drive to work, watch what you're listening to. Listen to either beautiful music, we have a lot of music that Ananda has produced, or listen to some nice, uplifting music, or listen to lectures by Swami Kriyananda or Paramahansa Yogananda or one of the other acharyas, because what that will do is to create a kind of bubble of higher vibration around you and around your car. We had a friend who was a salesman, and so he had to drive quite a lot on the road. It was almost his profession to be on the road driving. And he always listened to either chants or to lectures. And the time would pass very quickly, for one thing, but more importantly, his consciousness was high. And so people would be angry and they'd be honking and they'd be shouting, but it didn't bother him because he was centered and he was uplifted. And so he was kind to other drivers and considerate, and it turned out that he was able to have his commute be a very positive experience. In the early years of Ananda, Daviji and I started an ashram in San Francisco. And it was a very large house, and we had about 30 people living in the house. And at one point, we also wanted to employ people, so we started a business, and it was a restaurant that served healthy foods in combination with a bookstore. And so we had this restaurant bookstore, and the person who was the manager of the restaurant bookstore, often had to stay quite late at night. And it was often 11:30 or midnight before she was finished and could lock up. And then it was a single woman, and she had to travel by bus because she didn't have a car. She had to travel by bus, and the bus went through a very a bad part of town. And so on the bus, a lot of people who were inebriated late at night, and she was very afraid about this bus ride. And so she went to talk to Swamiji. And Swami said, well, can you have somebody pick you up? She said, well, no, it really doesn't work that late at night, and people are asleep. Says, well, can you take a cab? No, it's too expensive. What, can you drive yourself if you had a car? I don't have a driver's license. And so there was no other way for her to commute than the bus. So Swami said, all right, if that's the only way, here's what I want you to do. When you get on the bus, look around and pick one person on that bus, the person that seems to most need help, and for the entire trip, pray for that person. And if that person gets off the bus before you do, then find another one and pray for him. And so she started doing this. And 2 weeks later, she came to Swamiji, and she said, Swami, you know what? The bus ride home is my favorite part of the day. And see how we can begin to take control over our environment and over especially those things that are otherwise have a tendency to pull the mind down. And so here I'm talking about, as part of lifestyle, to control the immediate environment around you. You can't control the whole of Chennai. You can't control India. You can't control politics. You can't control the weather. But a lot of people spend a great deal of their mental energy worrying about, or anxious or angry about, or something about things that they have no control over. And they completely ignore what they do have control over. So start with what you can control. So your immediate environment, I've been talking here about surround yourself with uplifting sounds. And if possible, try to find a way to reduce the amount of noise in your environment. The noise in the environment can actually, if there's too much noise, it can shorten a person's life because it's a stressor on the system. So maybe you can't do anything about the noise on the street, but you certainly don't have to have noisy things in your own house, in your own environment. You don't need to have a television blaring in one room. We visited some relatives, and they had 3 or 4 television sets, all tuned to different stations, and all on, all at the same time. They weren't watching them, but it was just part of their unconscious habit pattern, and it just produced noise. And probably knowing what's on television, the content of television, every one of those sources either made them angry or excited or brought their consciousness down in some way. So control the noise, make your environment beautiful. I mean, here you understand that intuitively. The altars and the setup of the rooms that we come into are incredibly beautiful. There's a beautiful sense of taste, of color, and beauty. But there's often in India, more than in the West, a kind of ignoring of what we would call tamasic elements. Dirt, trash around, things just left there. And you think, well, it doesn't matter. But once at Ananda, we had a very, very advanced yogi visit. This was the man, Swami Chidananda, who took over from, he was Swami Shivananda of Rishikesh, Swami Shivananda's successor, or head of that ashram. And he visited Ananda and toured all around, wonderful, wonderful soul. But at one point, Devi Ji and some others were giving him a tour of the garden. And he hadn't said very much, hadn't commented very much, but at one point they came to a place and there was a rusty can. And he said, "What is that for?" And they explained, well, when we transplant the little plants, then we get water and we water the new little plants with that. And he said, if it has a use, then clean it up and paint it and have a special place for it. Because something that's old and rusty and not good looking, ugly, attracts lower astral entities. And that was a rather shocking statement by him. But so trash left around isn't just trash left around. It's an attractant to lower consciousness and lower entities. So look at your environment and make it beautiful. And clean up the areas. Every once in a while it would be good to go with fresh eyes into each room that you have and look and say, what could be improved in this? And you don't need to make huge changes, just little incremental changes can produce a very large overall effect. A couple of months ago, one of the men at Ananda, the person who's in charge of the website, did something called the 30-day challenge, 30-day meditation challenge. And he challenged everybody each day to do one little thing that would improve their meditation. Maybe it's fix up your meditation room. Take a good look at your seat. Take a good look at where the altar picked. Each day it was something different. Pay deep attention to your breath while you're doing it. So each day was a little tiny thing. And people wrote back and said it was transformative for them. There was a very interesting story about the British National Bicycling Team. And they were never very good in terms of world competition. And they got a new coach, and the new coach said, I want us to go through every aspect of what we do and improve it by 1%. And he said, I think that if we can do that within 5 years, we will be one of the top teams in the world. And so they looked at the bicycles, and yes, we could just tweak the wheels a little bit and that would improve the balance. And they looked at when they had to travel on the road, they realized that they didn't sleep very well, so he had them bring their own pillows along, and their diet, they looked at that. And so everything that they were doing, they tried to improve just 1%. But they did not achieve their goal of being world champions in 5 years. They achieved it in 3 years. And so we don't need to make radical changes in our lifestyle. But if we make little changes and keep evolving those little changes, the cumulative effect of it can be very strong. Now, so I've talked about the hearing and the sight. Those are the two most important ones. So you get the idea. You just improve your environment. Yoganandaji said that we should live with plain living and high thinking. That's what, when he gave a very powerful speech that ignited Swami Kriyananda's thoughts about doing communities. Yoganandaji called them world brotherhood colonies. We call them, spiritual communities. So the Ananda spiritual communities. Yoganandaji gave a very, very powerful talk, and he said in that talk, plain living and high thinking lead to the greatest happiness. And so for all of us, we should take those words seriously. There are many, many things that we have or that we do that aren't very contributive to our happiness. We just do them out of kind of habit pattern. Davy and I, for the first 13 years of our son's life, we moved 13 times. And it was very good. It was wonderful, because when you move so often, you don't accumulate a lot of unnecessary stuff. And so we ended up with a kind of rule of thumb that said, if we either love it or use it, we'll keep it. But if we don't do either of those two, we'll get rid of it. And that allowed us to have a very simple environment. Unfortunately, now we've been in the same place for, 15 or more years, and things are starting to accumulate. So we go through as often as we can, and we look at with that same thing in mind. Do we love it or do we use it? And if not, then we tend to either get rid of it, or more commonly, because we have beautiful things from all around the world, we will often give it to some friend or a visitor, and then they feel that they've had a little part of some of our lifestyle. And so try to look in terms of simplifying your life. And that, I'm talking here about the different possessions, but also look at the different activities that you do. Do you love to do them? Are they really contributing to your happiness? If so, then continue. If they're producing greater health for you, greater happiness, more to bring your consciousness closer to God, then obviously continue those and try to replicate them. But look at the unconscious time wasters that you have in your life that are not only not producing happiness, but are actually pulling your consciousness down, and simply stop doing them. Sometimes we get into certain habit patterns that are no longer fulfilling. Maybe they were fulfilling years ago, but they're no longer fulfilling. And so just take a kind of an inventory. It would be very good to do this periodically, kind of in the West, I don't know if they have it in India, but in the West there's something called spring cleaning, where you go through the house each spring and you clean it very thoroughly. You know, you wash all the windows and you dust in places that you haven't dusted all for a long time, and you clean up the house thoroughly. Well, this is our house, and this is our house, and we need to go through periodically and clean up this house and this house, because that's what's going to make a much greater difference in what we're in producing our happiness. And then I'll just end by saying that Yoganandaji defined our path as a combination of meditation and service. And so there are really three elements in our daily life cycle and the way that we live that we need if we're going to be happy. It's all about our own happiness. If we're going to be happy, there are really three elements that we need to make an effort to integrate into our life. The first is meditation. We were talking with someone just yesterday, and a common question comes up. I'm so busy, I don't have time to meditate. What can I do? Well, we said at least do 5 or 10 minutes of meditation, but do it every day. So when you wake up, if you don't have a strong, it's a habit pattern, and you just need to train yourself, but if you don't have the habit pattern of meditation, then set your alarm clock for 10 minutes earlier. And as soon as you get up, begin to meditate before the mind gets restless, before other things come in. Usually people have some control over their early morning, and usually people have some control over the time before they go to bed. And so make sure that during those 2 periods you have some time in which you meditate and you make a connection between your soul and God. If you start your day and end your day with that connection, it will help carry you through the rest of the day, and it will make your sleep deeper and more uplifted. And so those 2 are very important. Then if you can extend the period of meditation, if you can meditate longer once a week, there are various things, and you've probably had some classes on that. But so at any rate, try to meditate, just do 1% more than what you're doing now, and see what you can do. So meditation is very important. Every day you should have some element of service in your day, where you do something that is not done for your own benefit. What is service? Service is activity that you are not trying to get something back for that activity. In the Gita, it's called Nishkam Karma. And so you do something and you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to get paid for this, or you're not even thinking, oh, I'm going to get thanked for this, or people are going to see me doing this and they're going to think what a great person I am. Nothing. So you do something just because it's the right thing to do and a good thing to do. And try to do that in such a way that it actually helps somebody. We can do impersonal service, and that's okay, but generally speaking, if you really focus and try to serve some one person, then there will be more heart quality in that. There will be more consciousness. We were talking with someone who, I won't mention their name, but they work with disadvantaged youths, or people who have come from abusive homes, and they go and they work with them and try to provide help and some sort of teaching and friendship and kindness, and it's a beautiful kind of service. Work with children. There are so many children that need a little bit of help. Or serve a spiritual organization such as this, which is dedicated to serving other people. So meditation, service, and the third thing, which I'll end with, try to find ways that your mind and your heart keep turning back to God during the day. Some people like to do chant and carry on an inner chant. I've had periods of my life where I have taken, and I often do this, it isn't just once or twice, I often take a single chant and chant that mentally for a week or 2 weeks at a time. And when you do that, that chant begins to go deeper and deeper into your consciousness. Yoganandaji said we should chant a chant until we can bring it into the superconsciousness. And so, at least by repetitive chanting, just pick your favorite one. All of these chants work, but something that works for your particular time or your bhav or whatever it is, pick one and repeat it over and over so that that comes into your subconscious. And you'll find that it'll be there when you wake up in the middle of the night. It'll be there when you're first getting up in the morning. It'll be there in the back of your mind as you go to sleep. And that chant or some people use a mantra, but that repetitive turning of the mind towards something spiritual will begin to drive out the other things that compete for your mental space, and it will lift your consciousness. And when you can stay in that kind of a bubble of connection with God, you'll find that your life is happier, you're more harmonious, you're more uplifted, and in fact, you'll find it also leads to more success. Okay.